Start our program. This panel is all about cultivating conversations. So we've been talking a lot about some of the challenges and issues and engaging. And I think we've established really important the importance of engaging with our customers, with our consumers, with our friends and neighbors. So the question is, how do we approach consumer engagement? How do we cultivate these conversations? And our panelists are all experts in that arena and have some really great stories to share with us. I'll introduce all three of them, then they'll each have a few minutes to share their presentation, and we'll come back and do questions at the end. So save your questions until all three panelists have presented. If you have questions and you're afraid you'll forget them, write them down. You have questions that you want to feed up here to me at the podium, write those on index cards and hold them up, and the Aggies will pick them up, and then of course we'll have the microphones around at the end so you can ask your questions from the floor. Our first panelist is Phil Keiser, who is President and CEO for Culver Franchising System. Mr. Keiser has more than 35 years of food industry and strategic restaurant management experience, and his firm, I have to say, is one of my absolute favorites. The combination of butter, beef, and custard just makes my heart go pitter-pat. He oversees the development and execution of the organization's strategic plan, finance, marketing, human resources, information technology, supply chain, franchise development, and operations. He joined the company in 1996 after holding several other positions, including Director of Operations, Vice President of Operations, and most recently as President and COO. We're really glad to have Phil Keiser from Culver's join us. Then we'll have Leah McGrath, who has worked with Ingles supermarkets as their corporate dietitian since 2000. And Leah's been asking some great questions throughout the day, and we sure appreciate that. In the past few years, she's become well known for her work in social media. She's currently the most followed supermarket dietitian in the country via Twitter. She coordinates both the Facebook and Twitter accounts for Ingles Markets and has developed innovative strategies to connect brands and products to consumers and to inform consumers about health and nutrition. Wow. That's a pretty important topic. Finally, we have Jenny Schweigert, who is a wife to a fourth-generation dairy breeder and mom to three fifth-generation dairy boys from Central Illinois. The family also operates a small sheep flock, shows Jersey dairy cattle, raises other 4-H critters, and professionally, she's the executive director of the AgChat Foundation, a not-for-profit which empowers farmers and ranchers globally to share their stories. She's dedicated to shortening the bridge between farm and fork while passionately advocating for an improved, non-marketing-based food labeling system. Great series of panelists. Please welcome them. And Phil, I'll leave the podium to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name is Phil Keiser, I'm President and CEO of Culver's, and I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background of who we are. Anyway, we're, for those of you not familiar with Culver's, because we don't have any here in D.C., but we are a chain of franchised operated restaurants, owner-operator model. Basically, we're a collection of mom-and-pop businesses, much like family farms, which are out there. Currently, we have over 560 restaurants in 24 states, predominantly upper Midwest, although we have made some great goals into Florida, Arizona, and some other places like that. There you go. So you get a little sense of what we're about. We're about butter burgers and fresh frozen custard, dairy and beef. How does it get any better than that along the way? Hopefully that makes you hungry. But I'll just give you a little bit about my background. I grew up in northern Indiana. My grandfather was a farmer, and I was actually a dairy farmer for 2 weeks. Thank you. Grandpa got sick. I came home from college. It wasn't asked if I wanted to be a dairy farmer for 2 weeks, but I was. The one thing I know for sure from that experience, there were some girls that were really glad to see Grandpa. Anyway, one of the things that we try to make sure we do within our organization is maintain this connection to agriculture. And there's some stats up there that share about, how many family farms we support through our dairy, how many cows, the relationship with some of it says 20 years up there. I think some of them are closer to 30 years to the co-op that we buy from. And our current marketing campaign is Welcome to Delicious. And how we're positioning that is that we aren't necessarily going out and talking specifically about where our products come from, but we're talking about that we have people that really care about where our products come from and that we care that they're wholesome ingredients. Anyway, that represents a scene of that fresh ground beef. And along with our Welcome to Delicious campaign, one of our current campaigns, as maybe some of you are familiar with, is the Thank You Farmer campaign. How many of you have seen one of our blue barns? We got 5 right now. If any of you have a nice, good-looking, traditional-looking barn along a major highway in the United States, we'd like to hear about it. Give you a free paint job. But along with that, we think that we are, from an organization, we very clearly understand that every meal starts with a farmer. And as an organization, we also understand that when we talk about our food and the ingredients and some of the topics that are hot here at this meeting, we take an approach where we understand that America's farmers understand that they get rewarded when they take care of their land, they get rewarded when they take care of their livestock, and they wouldn't do anything that wouldn't feed their family. So that's philosophically, I guess, approach more or less how we go to about approaching that. As well as I could show you here, if we get up there, a lot of our marketing materials, we include this Thank You Farmer theme throughout it. On our kids' meals, we tell a little story about agriculture. We show the blue barns on the cups, our bags, our billboards, all those things. We incorporate that into Welcome to Delicious and Thank You Farmer. In addition to that, we have a strong relationship with the FFA. We think the FFA and the kids that are in FFA are just so awesome and outstanding, we can't hardly stand it. I don't know, I think if you have anybody, you meet them, if they're a national officer or a state officer, if that's on their resume, just hire them. We'll figure out what they're going to do with it different. Are we going now? Along the way. But this is a way for us to show our gratitude to agriculture. Some in our industry talk about agriculture in this evil way. And we know that we can't do business without agriculture. So this allows us, the FFA program, to, there's our packaging, example of that we're able to help and provide some financial support. Today, in all of our restaurants, and it just happens today, it's a scoop of thanks. Everyone that comes in and donates $1 to FFA today gets a free custard cone. That's a heck of a deal, because it's somewhere around $2.40 if we include the governor's share, so away we go with that. But the Scoop of Thanks is a program that's going on today. Last year we also supported an essay contest with FFA, and that little gal you see there with the t-shirt on, that's Haley Hampton from McKay, Idaho. School of about 35 students, about 28 of them are in FFA. And Haley wrote just one heck of an essay, and we gave them $10,000 so they could bring their kids to Louisville to the National FFA Convention. Gave them a GoPro camera so they could document it as well. We're going to continue to do that again this year, but we're going to get a few more kids involved, a few more schools that do it. But this little school in Idaho, we don't have a restaurant anywhere near there. As a matter of fact, that little school is an hour and a half away from the nearest stoplight. So it really kind of felt good that we were able to help a community like that. And then the Blue Barns, as I mentioned, or the Blue Jacket program. We currently right now are, as we've gotten closer with the FFA, we understand that the pride that's in that blue corduroy jacket. Maybe some of you still got one in your closet you can't wear. But we've raised $20,000 so far to help those kids that can't get their own jacket. When you hear about somebody wearing their cousin's jacket, we even had a little gal in our office when we were talking about this program. She was an FFA, and we didn't know at the time, but she was one of those that couldn't afford a jacket. As we were talking about this, a little tear came down her cheek. So we're going to be able to give 150 kids those blue jackets. And then altogether for FFA, we donated about $1 million over the last 3 years, and we feel really good about that. Not tooting our horn about the money, but a lot of that money goes locally, and it stays local, and we can help all those schools. And one thing that's been surprising about it is that we actually have some agriculture programs in some large cities. We found one in the city of Chicago when our operators didn't think they were going to find something. So, and then last year we had somebody created our Thank You Farmers logo and created a corn maze. So this year in all 24 states that we do business in, we're going to have a Culver's corn maze. Now I've been a little nervous with our marketing people because I have been to Arizona and I have been to Florida. So I'm a little concerned, but they assured me that we're going to have corn mazes in those states as well. So there's a little even fun with that. And then I mentioned the Blue Barns. Those are the 5 that we have, and we'd like to have a few more. But that's just been a fun thing, and the feedback that we've gotten with that, and the appreciation that's been shared by the agriculture community before that. So thank you.
Hi. So I've been the dietitian for Ingles for 16 years. For those of you, this is a picture of one of our newest stores in Greenville, Tennessee. For those of you who had high school Spanish, you're probably sitting there going, I know what that word means. Ingles, right? So you're thinking that's English in Spanish, right? It's actually named after Bob Ingle, or Robert Ingle, who's our founder. I found out kind of an interesting thing not too long ago, that it's also the slang word for groin. So I'm not really sure what happens when people who are native Spanish speakers see that on a store. One can only imagine. So we have 203 stores in 6 states. I'm the only dietitian right now for them, and I have a nutrition assistant intern working with me right now. So I wear a lot of different hats. As was mentioned, I do a lot of work with social media. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that I do. And I had written up this slide about what I do for customers and to inform customers. And I thought about the fact that one of the largest group of customers that I work with starts internally in our organization. So that's really the first group of people that you have to have on the same page, is your executive staff, your customer service, your buyers. So I have a lot of conversations, emails, with those folks to make sure we're on the same page about agriculture, about antibiotics, about high fructose corn syrup, about GMOs. And because if those people don't have your back, then it's really hard to go out to the consumers and really present accurate information. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation and that you can't always guarantee that everybody that you're talking to or in your organization feels the same way or is promoting science-based information or evidence-based information, but you certainly have to try internally first. So these are some of the things that I do to try and communicate about agriculture and farming and farmers. There's a lot of different things listed, so I'm going to kind of touch on a few of those things here in this presentation. This is me up in Saskatchewan last summer in a beautiful field of blooming canola. And one of the things I've tried to do for probably about the past 5 or 6 years is get out and meet farmers, not just in western North Carolina or in South Carolina and Georgia, but across the country, because I think that's really an important part of being able to communicate authentically with our customers about the challenges farmers have, whether they're beef ranchers in Nebraska or canola farmers in Saskatchewan. I think that I can come off more authentically if I'm actually talking to them and interviewing them and kind of taking away my experience on the farm or the ranch and then bringing it back to our customers, rather than just watching Food Inc. or GMO OMG or something like that. I use radio a lot of times to educate and dispel myths. So can you all play the very top one there?
One of the big things is not only the water source, because these fish that are native are certainly in very similar, if not the exact same, watershed. The big difference is the omega-3 count. With wild trout, they're usually rather lean. Their diet consists of, they might be lucky and eat some small fish, but mostly it's bugs, little crickets, stuff like that. Our fish are fed a very high protein, high omega-3 fat diet, which is in the feed. It's a special blend made just for us called the Sunburst Blend. And by feeding them such high protein, high fat, the flavor on the finished product is completely different. It's a more deep, more rich flavor than you might get from eating a native. And don't get me wrong, I love wild trout. They're delicious, but it's a little more of a mild flavor. Mm-hmm. And ours is a little more robust. And again, you look at the omega-3 counts in a wild trout versus a farm-raised trout. Certainly our farm-raised, the omega-3s are significantly higher in farm-raised.
So that was Wes Eason. Wes's family has like a fourth generation trout farm in western North Carolina. And that's one of the things I do is I interview farmers and different producers and suppliers on a radio show. It started out as a local radio show. Now it's carried through iHeartMedia, so it can be heard anywhere in the world. So having those farmers, and in this case a trout farmer, be able to speak to an issue like why farmed fish, in this case trout, are a great nutritious choice. He's speaking from his point of view, talking about, it's a much longer show, about why farmed fish are a great nutritional choice. And then the second clip is actually an instant
Hi,
video.
this is Leah McGrath. Hi, this is Leah McGrath, the registered dietitian for your Ingles supermarkets. There are lots and lots of labels on foods these days, and it can get really confusing. Did you know that it's against federal regulations set by the USDA, that's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, to administer hormones to chickens and hogs? That's right. So, all of your chicken and pork is already free of added hormones.
So those types of messages play in all of our 203 stores in 6 states daily, sometimes multiple times a day, so much so that a lot of our associates are able to recite them back to me verbatim. And if I actually walk into a store and open my mouth, they look at me with something akin to hatred because hopefully they're learning something. So that's another way that I try and convey nutrition and fact-based messaging at our store level. And I want to tell you a little story. These are a couple pictures that I took. That top picture is William Shelton. William Shelton is a tomato farmer. He has a family farm that's been in the Shelton family for generations in Whittier, North Carolina. It's like a westernmost part of the state of North Carolina, almost in Tennessee or Georgia, North Georgia. And that's his tomato farm. He grows Mountain Majesty tomatoes for us and some other retailers, and those are the Mountain Majesty tomatoes in our store. And we do events in our stores. I have planned these events in our stores for the past 4 years. We call them Taste of Local. That's William in our store, meeting customers. I bring, I kind of call it like an indoor farmer's market. So once a month I bring different farmers and suppliers into our stores. We set them up around the store so that our customers can meet them and talk to them and see that these are folks of all different sizes. William's actually a fairly large farmer for our area in western North Carolina. He not only has a tomato operation, but he has a hydroponic lettuce operation, and he has an additional operation down in North Florida so that we can have tomatoes for a longer season, or we can have his tomatoes for a longer season. So typically I'll have anywhere from 15 to 25 different farmers and suppliers in our store so that our customers can meet them and ask them questions about their product and how it's produced. And this is William, a poster child on our website with his son. And these are some of the organizations that we work with on a regular basis. North Carolina Department of Agriculture, South Carolina Department of Agriculture, ASAP, which is the Appalachian Grown Program. Just trying to tell consumers the stories about some of our farmers, where our food is coming from. That's what they want to know. As was said earlier, Yvette said, what they really want to know is their food safe? Where is it coming from? Oh, I'm going to go back. So this is kind of a long post. I don't know if you can read this, but this is based on the blog I did about William Shelton. And when I walked around William's farm with him, I spent an afternoon with him and trying to kind of capture that experience of being on his farm with him. And this is the first time I had done a blog like this. This is the genesis of it all. This was 2 years ago. I asked him that question, about pesticides. And William's a smart guy. He went to University of Tennessee, has his degree in agriculture. And he says in there, if you can read it, he says, I'm pro-organic, but many people don't realize that organic farmers also use pesticides, just like I do. They use copper just like I do. And he said that my farm is not like Silent Spring. You know, kids come into my farm and they eat the strawberries. I feed my family the same things. You know, I was walking around, there were butterflies, there were bees, there were beetles, everything. It wasn't like this death knell of insects in there. Even though he uses pesticides, he tries to use them very judiciously. One of the things I hear a lot from customers that they repeat is that our food is doused with or drenched in pesticides. That's very common. And that's one of the biggest myths that I try and dispel about farming and agriculture, and about the difference between conventional farmers and organic farmers. So for me, it's just really important as a way of telling those stories, telling those farmer stories as much as I can in as many avenues as I can. And there was actually another one, but it's gone now. But you'll see a lot of things that I post on Twitter. Probably one of the things I post most frequently is USDA Organic is a certification of agriculture, not an endorsement for nutrition. So I probably post that once a week. So I do a lot of things like that just to try and get the word out, to bust myths and promote farmers in general. Thank you.
I believe we have all had our aha moments when we've realized that it's time to take action, please. Jeff Shipp of Farm Credit mentioned this morning a story about one of their Fresh Perspectives finalists who had a gentleman come to their farm and was going to take a photo of their cow and went up to the horse. We had a similar situation in 2010 at the Illinois State Fair, where we show Jersey dairy cattle, when a gentleman brought his daughter up to one of our cows and said, "Pet the horse, pet the horse." That was an action please moment for me. As a Cub Scout leader, I was driving a group of first graders to go geocaching. And suddenly, the clicker didn't work. I heard, "Stupid farmers, stupid farmers." It was a first grade boy who had apparently become annoyed because we were coming up upon a tractor that was pulling a planter and it was springtime. Now, why did he say this? You know, there's lots of different reasons it would have been initiated. It could have been the boy's father, and he's just repeating what he's been taught within his family. It could be lack of education in schools. It could be lack of farmers and ranchers telling their stories. It could be all of the above. Regardless of the reason, it's proof that we need action. So what is the action? Cultivating conversations with consumers, which is a passion that the AgChat Foundation started to bring together in 2010 and continues today. It's a passion that's fueled the AgChat community. You may be familiar with the AgChat hashtag on Twitter. It's a passion that has fueled the AgChat Foundation, a non-for-profit that's dedicated to empowering farmers and ranchers, agriculturalists, and now dietitians, chefs, restaurant owners, which was prompted a bit from our panel here, which is exciting. So what is the foundation? We empower farmers and ranchers, as I already mentioned. We are a grassroots organization, so it's mostly farmers and ranchers that are teaching one another, helping one another understand what works, what doesn't work. We're 99% volunteer driven. I don't think that you're going to find another organization like our organization. So how can we assist? We have held over 13 conferences. Our global conference is the 2016 Cultivate and Connect Conference, which will be held in December in Kansas City. We offer regional conferences, a collegiate congress, which we've teamed with the College Aggies program in the past on. We also have online resources where farmers and ranchers, dietitians, chefs can go and find more information about how to tell the story of agriculture. We offer networking. The networking possibilities within the community is endless. By going to the conferences, by attending our weekly chats, by attending our monthly food chats, where our food chat is a consumer-based type of chat where you're talking with chefs, dietitians, parents, people that are fighting with, food allergies in their home. And now we are going to be helping the food system side by offering advocacy guidance in the Advocate group, which is on Facebook. So I encourage you all to visit Facebook and search for Advocate and join the group. We're missing a graphic. We are also churning opportunity. You may have heard that we recently acquired the Ask the Farmers initiative. AskTheFarmers.com was another grassroots effort that was started by 3 farmers and ranchers, and it has grown to over 40 contributors who have been putting their lives out there for people to read and learn more about what they're doing. The exciting part about this is when we have people who really don't have the time to start managing a blog, they can go to Ask the Farmers and they can submit their story there for publication. We like to encourage people to share their stories on any of 3 mediums, whether that be on social media, which is huge and it will always be huge, or in person. My father-in-law does now successfully check the markets on the computer, but I doubt you're going to see him with a vlog anytime soon. I could be wrong. His way is to go to a St. Louis Cardinal game, and he talks to everyone around him. And by the time he's left the game, the row in front of him and the row behind him knows that he is a dairy farmer, that he has Jersey cattle, that he's been showing Jersey cattle since 1967. He can tell you about his hay, or the other people can tell you about the hay that he's growing. And through the years, there's actually been relationships that have been developed from other season ticket holders that then they see every time they get together. And that's a cool thing to see. We can also go and advocate on the legislative level. As Tyson mentioned earlier, we need action, please, at the legislative level. We offer assistance in learning who you should be contacting, which issues should be up in front of you. Many successful advocates only focus on advocating at the legislative level, and that is fine. You have to find what is going to best fit into your farm style and lifestyle. Regardless of the method, we like to recommend bringing positivity to the conversation. Focus on a target audience within the movable middle, like St. Louis Cardinal fans, cooking people, food allergy parents, and more. You may remember a situation between PETA and FFA a short time ago. That conversation was primarily fueled by the agriculture community. There was not 1 out of 10 hits that was a consumer-based hit on Twitter. It was all people from the agriculture community. We quadrupled the SEO that PETA was receiving because people were writing blog posts and Facebook posts, and those letters PETA were in there, free advertising. We need to think about what we're going to do and try to be proactive rather than reactive, which we've heard several times today. We also encourage you to take the high road when possible, which is not always possible. I once heard someone say that if you dig in the manure, you're just going to keep finding more. Think about the emotional and the time commitment that it takes to argue with an extremist on Twitter. It takes a lot of time when that same amount of time could have been used communicating with 10 consumers who are open-minded, who will listen to your story. We also like to focus on telling your story. Something that I've learned from our panel today is that the restaurant and the grocery areas do not feel that we're telling our stories enough. There are not enough farmers and ranchers out there telling our stories. We are very much adamant about making sure you tell your story. Make sure that you're not a corn-beaten person who's out there talking about antibiotics on a beef lot. But I think that we are missing the opportunity through the food system where they can share our stories for us if we do not have time. I'm excited about the AgChat community because it combines advocacy training, it combines networking, and it combines opportunity for agriculture. I challenge you to take these tips and step out and take action, please. The AgChat community is changing the way that consumers view our food, fuel, and fiber. Won't you join us?
Yeah, 3 great stories and examples and sets of ideas from people in 3 different roles and 3 different levels of a given organization and 3 different spheres of influence, right? Pretty cool. So questions for these panelists. We'll take just a few before we introduce our next panel on a bit of a different topic. I see Terry in the middle here has got his hand up, so let's get a microphone over this direction. That'd be great.
I just want to know how you make such great burgers out of such a massive cow.
Just good old Midwestern beef.
I loved when you showed that picture of that Jersey cow, your 2 weeks of dairy farming. Dad swore that Grandpa always said that Jersey beef tasted sweeter. I don't know if there's any actual truth to that, but Granddad said that for years. Is that true? You're gonna chime in and say that's true?
That's what we raise,
Jersey beef. Yeah. So okay. Well, there you go. A little plug for those brown-eyed sweethearts, right? Okay. Questions from the crowd? Yeah. Let's go with Cliff in the back.
Good afternoon, Mr. Keiser. Thanks for being here. On behalf of myself and I think the whole crew here, looking at Chipotle as just a competitor of yours in one sense, thanks for all your support for farmers. I think when a lot of other corporate companies and folks, leaders, are looking at the negative side to bring forward, Culver's is always looking at the positive side to bring forward, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for that. And I do think, though, that's one of the things that I believe strongly that organizations such as this can do is we need to not only reach out to the consumers, we need to reach out to the executives. I was at an industry event the other week, and we had a high-up individual at a big company publicly refer. I saw it correctly posted in his restaurants accurately, but his words were not accurate as it referred to a lot of this. And as I say that, we need to reach out to the executives as often. I hear from the activists way more than I hear from the ag community. Statement of fact.
Let that sink in for a minute, right? Not that we're probably surprised at all, but there's an action please opportunity right there if ever I heard one. Adnan, yeah.
How do we educate the restaurants and supermarkets? I feel we always kind of trickle down the education to them. It's based on some consumers or advocates, asking them questions, and they come back to the processor or meat processor manufacturer. How do you feed your animals? How do you do this? Why shouldn't especially supermarkets, be more proactive and really ask to be educated in their entire staff, because they're the one in contact with consumers, and instead of just sending a question to their supplier every once in a while, we really need to be more proactive in educating the entire staff of a supermarket. Restaurant would be more difficult, but definitely with supermarket would be easier.
Okay, Leah.
So I would say that most, when I first started out as a supermarket dietitian, there were about maybe a dozen of us in the country. Now there are probably 800 supermarkets dietitians across the country, and many of us do have that role to be the voice, find out information, disseminate information internally and externally to consumers about evidence and science-based information about animals, about agriculture. So I would say that realizing that there's a lot of us supermarket dietitians out there now, if you haven't already, and getting in touch with us either through organizations, and if you see me, I can tell you the organizations, but many of us are really trying to get the message out to all those layers of consumers. So try supermarket dietitians. The other thing I just want to kind of piggyback on something that Phil was saying is that I think we really need to say no to some of these brands and marketing agencies. The problem that I see is not the farmers, it's not the consumers, it's the marketing agencies that are promoting these this negative and fear-based messaging. And I probably write to or call somebody once a week and say, no, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable that you want me to promote the fact that you don't use toxic pesticides. I mean, a pesticide is toxic. That's what the word means. Pesticide kill, right? Toxic pesticides, that's just redundant. Why are you even saying that? So I think we need to just, hold their feet to the fire sometimes and say, this is not acceptable because you're not helping. It's not helping you, it's not helping me, it's not helping consumers to have this continual drumbeat of negative messaging, fear-based messaging for our consumers. And it needs to stop, and it needs to stop with the marketing agencies and the brands.
What's the response? So the follow-up question then is, what's the response when you go back to a vendor, supplier, marketer and say, sorry, no, try again?
Oh, well, because I have quite a bit of control when I do social media for Ingles. So, when I do things, I will tell people I'm not putting that up on our Facebook page or Twitter or whatever, but I will put this up, and then we'll reframe the message a little bit. And usually they're not going to say anything to me because I'm the customer, and I can say, well, I'm not going to put that up there, but this is what I would suggest. So typically I don't get any pushback. But on other issues like, Del Monte recently they switched over to the BPA-free lining, and they have non-GMO on their cans of tomatoes. No big deal. They're just copying everybody else. BPA, big deal. What I had a big deal with was the fact that they, on Twitter, on social media, they said to Food Babe, who I call Fear Babe, thanks, we're glad to be part of the Food Babe army. And instantly, hundreds of farmers, dietitians were like, what are you doing, Del Monte? Why would you do that? And so I had a series of emails with Del Monte. I still don't know if they really understand what the problem was, if they had some 22-year-old intern running their social media site or not. But sometimes you have to make them aware that this is going on. Maybe they don't even know what's going on the social media side of the house. So, yes, sorry.
So in addition to all of the things going on at our farm and home, I have a child that has food allergies, and I am constantly taking several hours out of a week to go grocery shopping and reading these labels, and I have gotten so frustrated by looking at the labels. I've even gone to a packaging company within the state of Illinois, and I was told that they really don't care. If it's going to affect their bottom line, they're not going to do anything about it. So what I would encourage is for farmers and ranchers and everyone to go to the retailers like Walmart, like Ingles, Kroger, and voice your opinion there, because that's where the bottom line is happening. And tell them how it affects all of us.
Phil, there's a question, and we're way off on time here, but so we talked a lot about the supermarket space, but in the space that you're in, where you've got consumers coming into your shop to sit down and have dinner or take dinner home with their family directly, do you get some of those same kinds of questions or conversations or pressures back? Do you get, and obviously you talked about the activists already, but do you get what I'll call honest customer feedback on these type of issues, or do folks just come in and want to leave a little bit happier than when they stop by?
Well, there's not a lot at the restaurant level. I'd have to say it comes in more to the support center where we get a lot of that. But I think here it goes again back to how you market and position your products. I mean, if you raise the question, you're going to get the questions back. If you change the conversation like we have attempted to do with the Welcome to Delicious campaign, then we get the conversations that come from the consumer as well as that. But here again, I think to this thing about the packaging and the example here with Del Monte, it goes back to my statement about educating the executives. I had a guy who was the head of marketing, and I'd say it if he was sitting in the room, who went to Baxter, Minnesota to be a celebrity cow milking contest. He markets fresh frozen custard. He had to go to the internet to figure out how to milk a cow. Now I was really rather proud of him because he didn't think the tail was a pump. But, when you get down to it, that's the way most of these organizations and there are, and that's the level of understanding that is there. They don't understand it. You all can help.
Great. Let's give this panel a round of applause.